Thank you for your time and for being here with us today. To all, welcome to today's public lecture. Welcome to today's public lecture entitled Speech Performance Related to Culture, organized by the English Department, Faculty of Humanities, Samratulangi University. My name is Devina Ranto, and I will be the MC for today's event. Some additional information for all of the participants to please turn on your camera while this public lecture is still in progress, and to please stay muted until the question and answer session. Now, before we start our lecture for today, we are going to begin with an opening prayer, and please allow me in leading the prayer according to my Christian faith. Let us pray. Dear God, we praise and thank you for your care that has guided us so that we can all be gathered here in this public lecture on speech performance related to culture this morning. We pray that you will bless and guide this lecture from start till finish, and it will be a blessing for all of us participants. We pray that you will bestow wisdom, health, and strength on the presenters, committee, and participants present at this time. This is our prayer, and we open our public lecture. In Jesus' name, amen. Father, we have opened with our prayer. We are going to move on to our next session. I would like to invite Sir Donald Lotulung, SS Umum, as the Chief of Committee to deliver the activity report. To Sir Donald, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. It's time for me to give the report to the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities about this public lecture. The Honorable the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Maya Pinkanwaro, SS, Umum, MED, PhD. The Honorable the Speaker of this public lecture, Professor Dr. Robert Sibarani, MS, my respected lecturers and beloved students of the Faculty of Humanities, and the other participants from the outside of our faculty, and our Dean too, who will represent the Dean of our faculty. And ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the committee, I would like to thank first to the Almighty God because of His love and care. So we are the committee can conduct this public lecture today. It's because of the solid and good work. So this public lecture entitled Speech Performance Related to the Culture can be conducted now, and it is also because of the support from the leaders of the Faculty of Humanities and the English department as well. Thank you very much to the Dean of Faculty of Humanities for giving us the text to be the committee of these public lectures, and it is taking place now. And in this public lecture, we have already the speaker. He's here, Professor Dr. Robert Sibarani, MS, and we are very grateful to have him to be the speaker in this public lecture. Professor Sibarani, as I know, he is the lecturer in USU, Universitas Sumatera Utara, and he's the head of the research institute as well in USU. And he has a lot of experience in teaching and doing research. So I do believe what he's going to explain or deliver in this public lecture, the materials are very useful for us, and we take the beneficial knowledge, and also we can broaden our insight related to this public lecture. Thank you very much. and the Honorable Dean of Faculty of Humanities. This public lecture is taking place through the Zoom meeting, and for the participants, there are many participants who are joining these public lectures, and there are around 200 participants have been registered, and now in this Zoom meeting there's 120, and I'm sure the number of the participants still increasing, in the coming minutes. And I think that's all what I can report regarding to this public lecture. And God bless us. Happy joining this public lecture. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Donald. Moving on, I would like to invite our Vice Dean, Dr. Mariam Pandean, SSMHUM, as a representative of the Dean in the Faculty of Humanities, to give the opening speech and to officially open today's lecture. To Mrs. Mariam, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Terima kasih. Selamat pagi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya. Salam kebajikan. Yang saya hormati pembicara kuliah tamu kita pada hari ini, sebut dengan hormat Profesor Dr. Robert Sibarani, MS, dari Universitas Sumatera Utara, para peserta kuliah umum, mahasiswa yang ada, panitia kuliah umum, pimpinan jurusan Sastra Inggris yang menggelar kegiatan kuliah umum pada hari ini. Istimewa, seluruh mahasiswa jurusan Sastra Inggris, bahkan dari jurusan yang lain mungkin ada join dalam kuliah umum pada kesempatan ini. Pertama-tama permohonan maaf dari Ibu Dekan, Maya Pinkanwaro PhD, yang pada kesempatan ini karena kesibukan yang lain, beliau tidak bisa join bersama kita di Zoom meeting ini. Dan salam hormat untuk Prof. Dr. Robert Sibarani yang berkenan ada di kegiatan ini yang sudah diundang oleh panitia yang ada. Tema kuliah umum pada hari ini yang diangkat oleh jurusan Sastra Inggris yaitu Speech Performance Relates to Culture. Hal ini dimaksudkan agar suasana perkuliahan untuk mahasiswa tentu akan berbeda, yang biasanya mereka menerima dari dosen jurusan Sastra Inggris. Untuk kesempatan ini mereka akan menerima dosen tamu yang tentu dapat berbagi terkait ilmu pengetahuan yang ada, yang digeluti. Untuk itu kami mengharapkan tentu seluruh mahasiswa bahkan dosen yang ada yang terlibat dalam kegiatan ini dapat memanfaatkan waktu, dapat memanfaatkan momen yang luar biasa ini, biar boleh saling berbagi, bertukar informasi teristimewa, boleh berdiskusi terkait tema yang diangkat pada kuliah umum ini. Untuk itu saya atas nama Dekan Fakultas Ilmu Budaya, Maya Pinkanwaro PhD, tentu menyambut dengan gembira kegiatan ini yang sudah benar-benar dipersiapkan oleh panitia yang ada, dan tentu biar kegiatan ini dapat dimanfaatkan juga oleh mahasiswa yang ada, khususnya staf yang ada di program studi atau jurusan Sastra Inggris. Dan sekali lagi saya ucapkan selamat mengikuti kuliah umum ini, dan kiranya Tuhan memberkati kuliah umum ini dibuka secara resmi. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shalom dan selamat pagi.
Thank you very much to our Vice Dean, Dr. Mariam Pandean. Now we will be hearing a public lecture by Professor Dr. Robert Sibarani, MS. And with that, I will be handing it over to Dr. Jul Ceratu, SSM MKTG, who will be our moderator for today. So to Dr. Julcio, the screen is yours.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Devina. And before starting the general lecture, I will introduce Professor Dr. Robert Sibarani, MS. This is his curriculum vitae. It's very complete because he is very talented. Okay, his full name is Professor Dr. Robert Sibarani, MS. Prof. Robert, I don't know what is what is the title for this. CIKAR. Maybe Professor can explain it later. And place and date of birth, Sibarani, Tobasa, 12 February 1964. He is married with and has 3 children and 1 grandson. And the formal education, his doctor is from Unpad, Bandung in 1994. And then after that, he got postdoctor from University Hamburg, Germany in 1995, and PAR program, PAR program in University Leiden, the Netherlands in 2011. I think this is the same time with my sandwich, yeah, Professor, when I got the sandwich in Leiden University as well. And SAME program from University Lorentale, Napoli, Italy in 2013 to 2014. Certified International Qualitative Researchers in 2021. And he is full professor at USU since 1st October in 2001. Then his structural experience, he was a rector of Universitas Tapanuli in 1995 to 1998 and head of Sociocultural Research Center of Universitas Sumatera Utara in 2000 till 2005. And he was rector of Universitas Dharma Agung in 2002 till 2006. Then after that, in the second period as well, 2006 till 2011, he was rector of Universitas Dharma Agung. So he was a rector of Universitas Dharma Agung for 2 periods. And then at the same time as well, 2005 to 2011, he was a head of social service of Universitas Sumatera Utara. And at the same time as well, 2006 till 2010, member of Research Council North Sumatra Province. And from 2016 to 2021, Director of Postgraduate School, Universitas Sumatera Utara. Then 2020 to 2025, Head of Oral Tradition Association North Sumatra. Then 2001 to 2006, he is a Head of Research Institute, Universitas Sumatera Utara. That's very complete, very talented. And his teaching experience, he teaches English at Situational English Course Medan in 1984 to 1988, and teaching at undergraduate and graduate programs of Universitas Sumatera Utara, and then teaching at graduate program of Universitas Negeri Medan, visiting professor at Vet School Münster, German, October till November in 1996, visiting professor at Universitas Napoli, Le Orientale, Italy, January till April 2014, visiting professor at Tohoku University, Japan 2016. Then visiting professor at Poland University, Germany, May 2018. Why I should read all of this? Because this to motivate us as well. Okay, and I think, yeah, and he has a lot of international journal publication on international journal in Scopus and in Google Scholar. His high index in Scopus is 11 and in Google Scholar is 16. And a lot of research about oral tradition, local wisdom, phenomenology, qualitative with its models, and then anthropolinguistics approach. Okay, I think that's all for Professor Dr. Robert Sibarani CV, and we will start to have general lecture. Yeah, please, Professor, time is yours.
Thank you, Naik, Dr. Anneke Yulce Ratu, as a moderator of this public lecture. And thank you also, Devina Rantung, as the master of ceremony for this public lecture. Our Honorable Dean of Faculty of Humanities, University of Samratulangi, maybe Universitas Samratulangi, because in USU, in our university, the name of the university is not translated into English. We just say Universitas Sumatera Utara. Ibu Maya P. Waru, SS, Umum, MED, PhD, represented by the Vice Dean for Administrations and Finance, Dr. Mariam Pandean. Dr. Mariam Pandean. And also, I just say, express my gratitude to Mr. Donald Lutung as the Chief of Committee, Donald R. Tulung SS Umum, and all of our beloved students are from this University of Samratulangi, Universitas Samratulangi, and maybe there are some lectures here. As I just told you just now that maybe half of this time will be just used by me to express my idea about this topic, and then it will be continued by Joshua Lieto. He is a PhD student from University of California, Riverside. He just came here last week for 10 months, sponsored by Fulbright, and he will study about anthropolinguistics. He is from Department of Anthropology, and maybe the object of the research will be about pantun, about but not only in Malay, but also in Batak people around Lake Toba. So again that this very interesting public lecture will be given, will be presented by both of us. Of course, about English, it is better if you pay attention very much to Lieto or Joshua Lieto's English, because he's a native speaker, of English. But about the topic of this public lecture, I think it's very important to tell you about my opinion, especially the branches of anthropolinguistics in anthropology and also in linguistics. Would you please just say, pay attention to this okay, slide. Yeah, maybe I just say try to change the title of my presentation. It is about teaching and also related to learning anthropolinguistics, speech performance. And when speech performance related to culture, it will be just discussed or presented by Joshua Lieto after my turn. First of all, let me just tell you why anthropolinguistics. Of course, speech performance related to anthropolinguistics. The question is why? Because in anthropolinguistics, language is differentiated from speech or speaking. Language is differentiated from speech or speaking. It is said that language is the source of culture. So when we speak Indonesian, of course, there is a culture as a matter of fact in our language. When we just speak in Indonesian or in English, there is a culture in our language. And it is different from speaking or speech. And it is called as the cultural practice. You may just see just now when Nai speak English from Minahasa, Bu Mariam Pandean speak Indonesian from Minahasa, and I also speak Indonesian from Batak, from Medan. Maybe speak Indonesian also in from Batak and Indonesian. As a matter of fact, our way of speaking is different. So our speech, as a matter of fact, represents our cultural practice. So that's why when we just speak English, there is culture in our language. Maybe the culture of Robert Sibarani and his community, and also this is my performance. This is my cultural practice when I speak English, and you can also see the difference when Joshua Lieto later on will speak English from California, and of course it is different when English itself is spoken from the native speaker, maybe from from another parts of United States, or maybe from America or Singapore. So this is as a matter of fact why anthropolinguistics is very important when we talk about speech performance. So in anthropolinguistics, there are three focus which are very important to pay attention. First of all, performance. Of course, when we are talking about speech performance, we say speech performance. When we talk about the state of speaking, we say speech performance. And say speech participations and also speech. What does speech performance mean? Speech performance is of presenting or carrying out a speech as the combinations of textual, the combinations of the patterns of our text as a lingual, elements, and then also non-textual or non-lingual elements. When I just give this public lecture, I just use my textual element as well as my just say gesture, which is to say non-textual or non-lingual just say elements. So speech performance may consist of a text and also just say context and context. Context means every element which support the text, such as my just say gesture, and also the way I just say speak English. And context means to whom we just say speak, where we just say speak, something like that. So as a matter of fact, there are 4 types of context. It just say relate to place, time, and to whom we just say speak, and also our ideology about what we just say. So there are 4 types of the say context. This is just a speech performance. When we speak in any language, we combine the text, context, and context. So I think it is very important to pay attention when we just say speak in class, for example, as a lecturer or maybe as a student. And speech participation is the act of taking part in speech, such as in learning, teaching activity. How is this our speech participations? For example, when we just say teach in undergraduate and postgraduate, for example, in as we say S1, S1, S2, or S3, for example. Of course, our speech participations is different. When I teach, for example, the students in S1, well, maybe to say I give around 70% of my speech, and 30% is the participations of the students. But when I say teach in S2 or magister just say program, maybe around just say 40%. 40% of the time or the schedule is just say taken by me, while 60% for the just say students. But for just say S3 or just say PhD program, maybe just say only 30% is my turn, and then the participation, speech participation, maybe in discussions, brainstorming, for example, is given to the students. And of course, every grade of the just say class, every grade of the just say school must be just say different in speech participations. And what is speech indexicality? In speech indexicality is the act of signifying or giving the meaning to the speech to obtain the optimal meaning of the speech, such as the total meaning of the speech uttered in learning teaching process. For example, even though this is a public lecture, as a matter of fact, I have to just say pay attention to the indexicality, whether the students understand what I say or not. Also, the students also have to just say pay attention to the speech indexicality, whether he knows what the teachers, the lecturers say or not. So this is, as a matter of fact, the very important thing in anthropolinguistics about speech performance. So not only speech performance, but also we are talking about speech participations and speech, let's say, indexicality when we are talking about speech performance. And let me just say, tell you the branch of anthropology when we just say talk about anthropolinguistics. So in anthropology, or maybe Joshua Lieto will just say, tell it, just say later to you, because he's from Department of Anthropology. In my opinion, anthropology, and as a matter of fact, I just say quoted it from the say reference. Anthropology was divided into physical or biological anthropology. Physical and biological anthropology is now well known maybe in Department of Biology or just a faculty or department of let's say medications. And cultural, the second is cultural anthropology. And now in our university in Indonesia, it is just say changed to be social anthropology. And this is well known in just say in faculty of social and politics in Indonesia. But in some just say universities, they still just say remain in faculty of culture or faculty of let's say letters. And the third one is linguistic anthropology, and this is now well known in faculty of letters, which is already changed to be faculty of scientific culture, such as in Universitas Sumatera Utara. But in Universitas Samratulangi, I just say so from the flyer, it is to say called Faculty of Humanity. In UI, Universitas Indonesia, it is called Faculty of maybe Ilmu Pengetahuan Budaya. It is not to say ilmu budaya, such as in USU, there is to say ilmu pengetahuan, there is a word pengetahuan. But Universitas Sumatera Utara is, I think, the same as UGM, Fakultas Budaya, but maybe the English is a translation made by them in Faculty of Humanities. So this is, as a matter of fact, the place where anthropolinguistic is located in linguistic anthropology from the viewpoint of anthropology. And then the fourth one is archaeology. And in Indonesia, it is a single faculty, such as in, maybe in Universitas Gadjah Mada. And usually it is not said, it is not called linguistic, archaeological anthropology, but just anthropology. So this is from the viewpoint of anthropology. But from the viewpoint of linguistics, we may see here, this is the branches of linguistics. First of all, theoretical linguistics, with the scope of phonology, morphology, lexicology, syntax, discourse analysis, semantics, and pragmatics. Last time when we were students, semantics is just the same as pragmatics, as a matter of fact. But now it is just differentiated. But in some university, the subject is still say semantics or pragmatics. But as a matter of fact, semantics is different from pragmatics. And then applied linguistics, which scope translations, language teaching, philology, calligraphy, and discourse analysis. I make in italic because it is different from discourse analysis as the theoretical linguistics, and then lexicography. As a matter of fact, this is the applications of lexicology from theoretical linguistics. And then interdisciplinary linguistics, I just make anthropological linguistics above, and then sociolinguistic, psycholinguistic, neurolinguistics, linguistic philosophy or language philosophy, culinary linguistics, tourism linguistics, forensic linguistics. Maybe it will be enlarged one day, because, for example, forensic linguistics was not recognized by students, by us, when we are students in 2000, in 2000, for example. And anthropological linguistics, the name of anthropolinguistics from the viewpoint of, just say, linguistics, while in anthropology, it is called, just say, linguistic anthropology. You may see also the references, for example, like a basic course in anthropological linguistics by Marcel Danesi. To say anthropological linguistics is used as the title of the book. And then by Durante, for example, linguistic anthropology. Yeah, linguistic anthropology here. So this is, of course, the name which is to say related to anthropology, linguistic anthropology, and anthropological linguistics. From these four references, you may see that sometimes it is used anthropological linguistics, and sometimes it is used to say linguistic anthropology. And in my opinion, that both of them, as a matter of fact, classified into, just say, anthropolinguistics. So that's why, for example, here, there are some terms about anthropolinguistics. They are linguistic anthropology, and the definition is like this. Linguistic anthropology is the branch of anthropology that brings linguistic analysis to bear on anthropological problems, linking the analysis of semiotic and particularly linguistic forms and process to the interpretations of socio-cultural processes. Yesterday, when I just say asked for Joshua Lieto to send the paper or just say the opinion, he's going to tell you later. He will just say discuss about linguistic anthropology. Because why? Because it is something that brings linguistic analysis to bear on anthropological, let's say, problems. So if there is anthropological problems, how can we just say solve it with the analysis of linguistics? This is just say linguistic anthropology. While anthropological linguistics is the branch of linguistics that studies linguistic phenomena based on anthropological interpretations, relating it to culture, human biology, and cognitions. So, for example, we cannot understand the significations of a word or a sentence or just say a group of words, for example, from linguistic, but maybe culture can be just say used to give the interpretations. So this is the difference from the say the scope of linguistic anthropology. So by these definitions, we can differentiate linguistic anthropology, let's say, from anthropological linguistics. While ethnolinguistics, some university, for example, if I'm not mistaken, Universitas Palangkaraya, there is a, just say, subject in postgraduate, which is to say use ethnolinguistics, because one day I was invited to give a public lecture like this, but the title is ethnolinguistics. Of course, ethnolinguistics from the literature are references, we just say divine, the part of linguistic concerned with the study of the interrelations between a language and the cultural behavior of those who speak it, or between the language and psychology of a particular ethnic group. When I just say meet, for example, the people from Manado, from just say Minahasa, for example, in Jakarta, I can just say guess he is from Minahasa. Because why? Because the language he or she just say presents or just says speaks, as a matter of fact, signifies the cultural behavior of just say Minahasa or Manado just say people. And also when I speak Indonesian, speak English, maybe you can just say guess this is the person's or the speaker is from Medan, from Batak, because just say the language I use as a matter of fact, signifies the culture behavior of the speaker. My cultural just say behavior. This is ethno-linguistic as a matter of fact, the example of ethno-linguistics. While cultural linguistics, those who are, for example, study in Universitas Udayana, they say linguistic budaya, not just ethno-linguistic, not linguistic anthropology, not just say anthropology linguistic, but they say cultural linguistics or linguistic budaya. It refers to a related branch of linguistics that explores the relationship between language, culture, and conceptualizations. The relation between language, culture, and conceptualization, of course, in general meaning. So this is as a matter of fact, the difference between the four terminologies. As a matter of fact, I may say that we cannot easily differentiate them when we just say analyze language and culture related to language and say culture. So that's why the definitions of anthropolinguistics here is the scientific study of language within the framework of anthropology. When we study language with the frame of anthropology, let's just say the part of anthropolinguistics. And then also they study the scientific study of culture within the framework of linguistics. When we just say study, conduct research on culture from the framework of linguistics, that's just the part of anthropolinguistics. And also other aspects of humankind, maybe out of language and culture. That's to say anthropolinguistics. So we just say we can study politics. But of course, when we study politics from the framework of language, say politicians use in banner and also in flyer, for example, it is the scope of anthropolinguistics. Say again that anthropolinguistic is the scientific study of language within the framework anthropology, of culture within the frame of linguistics, and of other aspects of humankind within the interrelated framework of both anthropology and linguistics. And of course, what I just say here, anthropolinguistics may say scope linguistic anthropology, anthropological linguistics, and ethno-linguistic, and also cultural linguistics. It means anthropolinguistics studies language as the cultural resource, as I said just now, and speaking as the cultural practice. So anthropolinguistics try to differentiate language and speaking, or language and speech. Language is the cultural resource. We can just say find culture in the language, while just say in speaking or speech, we can find just say cultural practice. Of course, when just say conducting research about language from the viewpoint anthropolinguistics, we do not just say discuss about the content of language, or we do not just say try to find the cultural resource, but also to say how they practice their just say English, how they practice their Indonesian, how they practice their just say vernacular just say language, for example. And let me say that maybe now we can say that anthropolinguistic is in interdisciplinary approach. But again, let me just say, tell you that some researchers try to say that it is not only the matter of interdisciplinary approach, but also multidisciplinary approach. And maybe later on it will be to say go into a transdisciplinary approach or cross-disciplinary approach. But let me say that, for example, there is now a research about landscape anthropolinguistic conducted by I myself from Universitas Sumatera Utara, and also Dr. Luciana from ITB, Institut Teknologi Bandung, and then also Professor Jenny Malik from Universitas Indonesia. We just say study about landscape anthropolinguistics in the scheme of research called Riset Kolaborasi Indonesia, Indonesian Collaboration Research. So it is very interesting. It means that it is not only interdisciplinary between anthropology and linguistic anymore, but there is another type of discipline such as landscape, culinary, tourism, and now I try to tell you that there is education anthropolinguistics, or maybe teaching learning anthropolinguistics. This is, as a matter of fact, a new topic, but I think it is very important to the students and also to the researchers to discuss about teaching education anthropolinguistics. Because why? Because, for example, the students from English department, how they maintain, for example, the balances between speech performance, speech participations, and also speech indexicality. So this is the point I told you as a matter of fact, and this is the branches of anthropolinguistics from based on the object of the study, and our topic now in this public lecture, as a matter of fact, education or teaching anthropolinguistics. And based on the linguistic hierarchy, I think it is phonological anthropolinguistic, lexical anthropolinguistic, morphological anthropolinguistic, syntactic, and even semiotic anthropolinguistics. Again, later on, Joshua Lieto will tell you about semiotic anthropolinguistics. I can see from his material. And last but not least, I may say education anthropolinguistics, or maybe teaching anthropolinguistics, is a multidisciplinary study on education or teaching, such as learning teaching process in classroom, based on the analysis, interpretations, and the implementation of speech as the cultural practice and language as the source of culture. Thank you. If there is questions, we can just answer it after the turn of Joshua Lieto, especially how speech performance, speech participations, or speech learning in the States. Please, Joshua Lieto, the time is yours.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Sibarani. And thank you, everybody, for being here today. It's so nice to see everybody's face and to be part of this great seminar. I'm very impressed with how many people are actually here, and I'm so glad to be talking to all of you. So again, thank you. So as Dr. Sibarani mentioned, I'm going to be talking a little bit about semiotics. So I have a PowerPoint for you. Let me share that with you guys. Okay, there seems to be a small issue with my PowerPoint not wanting to share. We go there, share, open. Okay, this should work now. We've got it. Is everyone able to see it? Okay, let's start here. Okay, so the title of my talk today is Icon, Index, and Symbol. So I'm going to be talking about these three different types of signs. And that's what semiotics is at its root, it's the study of signs. So it's a study of signs in its broadest, most general sense. And this can be used to talk about any language across any culture or time. As Dr. Sibarani mentioned earlier, there are so many different contexts when we're talking about language. We have place and time, also the people who are speaking and the people who are being spoken to, and then also what ideologies are we working with. So this is a theory of signs that I want to present to you guys today. And I want to give some examples as we go, and we'll end with a very concrete and very real example of how understanding signs and the underlying meanings behind them is so important for not just academic or university study, but also for the very real world. So again, theme of my talk today is signs. But why are we talking about this? We're talking about this because all languages at their base use signs. Signs are fundamental for all kinds of communication, and reading signs and understanding signs in all their forms is very important for gaining any kind of fluency or understanding as to what is actually going on when people speak. But not all signs are of the same type. We can actually break them down into a sort of a, not a hierarchy, but a different classificatory scheme. We can classify them as one of three types that I'm going to talk about today. So today I'm going to draw from the work of philosopher, chemist, and logician from the 19th century, Charles Sanders Peirce. He was an American scholar, and he created what's called a triadic theory of signs. And it's triadic because everything in his theory comes in threes. So our theme for today is the three types of signs: icon, index, and symbol. So who actually was this guy? Well, as I said, he was a chemist, and he went on to make a lot of contributions in a lot of other fields, including philosophy, logic, and the topic of what I'm talking about today, semiotics. So at an early stage, he made a lot of really fundamental observations that would become more useful later on in human history. So for example, he observed that you could compute logical operations with electrical circuits. And that is a principle which is foundational for computers. Without this one observation, all of this that we're doing right now, and having this electronically mediated meeting over Zoom, this would not be possible. This was a necessary foundational observation in order to ultimately create what we call computers now. And more than that, of course, he formulated very foundational concepts about the sign. They contain deep insight, and they're still widely used today. It's a very useful framework. So let's start to actually talk about the framework now. So I want to talk about the very basics of what we call the sign relation. So what is a sign? Well, it's always at least made up of two things. The sign in itself, in its traditional classification, always is a relationship. It's actually not just one thing. It is a relationship. So you have a relationship between the name for a thing and then the thing itself. So we call the name, in traditional terms, we call it the signifier. So that means that's just the word, right? That word for a thing refers back to a thing, and we call that an object. So for example, when I say the word tree, you all understand, you all can picture an object in your head that that word refers back to. And conversely, when you see an object in the world that matches what you have in your head, that's named, that matches the signifier, you can connect it back to a word. So you can see something or touch something or smell something or experience something, and then that raw object, the data of that experience, can then be immediately related to the word, the signifier. So this is a really fundamental relationship that is at the heart of all semiotics. So the sign in itself always has a name or a signifier, and then it also has an object, and these two things refer to each other. This is a classical formulation that actually became fundamental for all of linguistics in the 20th century. If anyone has ever read Noam Chomsky or anybody, any sort of linguistics produced by anybody in his school of thought, it is they fundamentally operate with this notion that all words in all languages are signs, and they have this particular sign relation. So this is just a very basic starting point for where we're going to go with this today. I just wanted to introduce this concept before I now go into Peirce's theory of how we can actually classify these signs into three different types. So the first kind of sign that we're going to talk about is called an icon. And you guys may have seen this painting or this illustration. It's a very famous one. In French, at the bottom, it says, "Ceci n'est pas une pipe," which means this is not a pipe. So it is an image of a pipe. It is an illustration of what we can all clearly see as a pipe. But paradoxically, the words at the bottom of the image are saying this is not a pipe. And the point behind this image is to point out that this is a representation of a pipe. It might look just like one, and because you would look at the image and you would associate that image with the signifier pipe, it still is not an actual pipe. So the words for things are actually different than the things in themselves. And what this image is trying to get across is this idea of the icon. So this is a sign that has a direct similarity or likeness to its object. So it looks just like the object that it is representing. And icons can be very tricky because they look just like the object that is being represented, but they are not actually the object. They are still themselves a sign. They are not actually the object, but I'll give some examples later. I'm going to go through these three signs first, and then I'm going to give and then we'll go into some other examples. But briefly, some very common examples that I can think of icons would be, for example, emojis, which I will bring up later, as they're called, the little smiley faces that we write in our texts, or when we do this in text. What is this? What is this icon? The two hands coming together. Some people think it's praying, some people think it's clapping, but these things look exactly like what they represent, and that is what an icon is. So then the next level above that is the index. So an index is a sign that points to something else. So unlike the icon, which looks just like, it looks very similar, has a very direct similarity to its object, an index does not have a direct similarity, but rather it points to something. Like we all have an index finger. We use this finger to point, right? So the index as a sign points to something else. So when you see a traffic light and it is red, the redness of the traffic light is a sign. But what kind of sign is it? It's a sign that's pointing to something else. It's saying stop, right? Versus green, which is saying go. And indexes are incredibly useful signs. And it refers back to what Dr. Sibarani was talking about earlier with indexicality and understanding the full meaning that is provided. So when you see a traffic light, and when you see this, what I have here is an icon of a traffic light, but the traffic light in and of itself is actually an index because it's telling you, it's communicating other information. It's pointing at some other information, right? So then finally, to reach the most complex sign we can have, we have the symbol, which is a sign whose relationship to its object is purely arbitrary. So it has to be memorized. It has to be learned. So I give the example of the Greek alphabet, but you could use any alphabet. The English alphabet, the Batak syllabary, any alphabet or any way of writing is essentially composed of symbols, because the relationship between the signifier, which would be in this case the letter, and the object that it represents, which would maybe be the sound of the letter or the sort of idea of what the letter is in this case, that relationship is arbitrary. So it has to be learned and memorized. And it's arbitrary because it is formed by habit. So we all agree that this is how with spoken language, for example, how do we agree upon the meanings of words? Well, we usually don't. Usually it's just by habit. In other words, people simply have come to an understanding unconsciously by habit that there is a relationship between the particular word and its object or its meaning. So all words really in all human languages are fundamentally symbols, because remember, the word is not the thing, and between languages, the words for things vary, right? But there's no reason why this thing that I am sitting on should be called a chair and not a kursi. It doesn't matter either way. It's an arbitrary relationship that is formed by symbols. So to give a couple examples of these different things, I mentioned emojis, but something I hope everybody can take away from my talk here today are some challenges in thinking about signs and some challenges in thinking about the deeper meanings of things. So for example, I have a chart of emojis here, and these emojis are commonly used. I use them a lot. My friends use them. I think we all use them. And they have, in the way that they are as signs, in their physical, in their in their being as signifiers, they look like the things they represent. So they have a direct visual similarity to the ideas that they represent. So a face smiling looks like a happy face, right? A face that is crying, for example, looks like a face that is crying. But in a deeper sense, we have to ask ourselves, why do people prefer to use these in some cases over writing out what they're actually saying or feeling? You could argue that it's more efficient to use icons, so it's much quicker. But how do we agree upon the meanings of these icons? Do we all have the same understanding? So that's just something I want to challenge you guys to think about, and to think about how are we using these icons to perform our culture. So I don't have a picture of it here, but I'm sure you're all familiar with the two hands together icon. And I often ask myself, what is that actually? For some people, it is praying, right? So like when you're saying that you're praying for something, in other contexts, it may be, for example, in Indonesia, people may tend to do this when they're saying thank you or goodbye. And so therefore it could have that meaning. There's yet another meaning that I've heard people in the US say, which is it's actually not the same person's hands. It's actually two different people who are clapping hands. So these emojis as icons seem to have a direct similarity to the things they represent. But we have to pay attention to what people are actually, what they're actually representing, what are they actually performing. So to move on to indexes, I provide a great example of a lot of examples of all these different street signs, which themselves contain many different types of signs. So if we take, for example, in the middle top of the image, I have the octagonal red stop sign. The red stop sign with 8 sides in and of itself is both an index and a symbol, because it is, as an index, it's pointing and saying, it's telling you to do something, right? It's telling you to stop. But as a symbol, we have collectively, by habit, created this notion that this shape and this color and these things together, this is itself a symbol for stop. It doesn't have to be a road sign. It could be in any context. You could use that as a symbol meaning stop. And of course, the letters on the sign are also all symbols. So a lot of these signs have, so the stop sign has an indexical component. It also has a symbolic component. Some of the other signs, so for example, the yellow sign and the top, sort of towards the top left with the car that is swerving, that sign has a lot of iconic meaning, because it's showing you something that the image on it is an icon. It's showing a car that is swerving in the road. But the question is, that's the icon in the sign. But what is that sign's index? What is that pointing to? Usually, in my experience, it's telling you to be careful because this could happen to you. But that indexicality is not always clear, right? And so signs can have one or even up to all 3 of the components in them. So finally, to wrap up my talk with a very cogent and practical example, I want to talk about a presidential debate in the US that happened in 2020 between then President Donald Trump and now current President Joe Biden. So I bring this up because this is a great example of how symbolic meanings of signs are. We say that symbols are signs that are formed by habit, but actually symbolic meanings, because they are arbitrary, are often very contested. So to give you an example, during the debate, the moderator asked Trump whether or not he would tell hate groups to stand down. In other words, would he tell people who were white supremacists and members of hate groups, would he tell them to stop? And he used the verb stand in his response, but he did not say stand down. He said that they should stand back and stand by. So these almost sound the same because they all contain the same root verb. They all have stand. How different could they actually be? But when we actually look at the symbolism that's involved in these types of verbs in English, we can really see what he meant. So in order to explain this, I want to give a brief slide here about what kind of verbs these are. These are called phrasal verbs, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. But to recap, in English, a phrasal verb is one which uses a root word like stand from the previous example, and then it attaches a particle, which is usually a preposition. And this creates a new meaning. When you put these two together, the two words together actually make a new semantic unit that cannot be broken down. You cannot work backwards. In most cases, it's hard to work backwards and figure out what is the meaning by combining the two meanings of the words. It doesn't work like that. The two words together make essentially a new word. So they make a new semantic unit. So these types of verbs are very common in English because they're highly colloquial, which just is to say that they're very, it's very much used in everyday speech. And they're used in everyday speech because their constituent words are usually very simple. They're very common words that are combined to make new meanings. At the same time, they're highly expressive. So they express there's a lot of very deeply felt meaning in them because they are so commonly used. So, for example, these verbs can get a little bit confusing when you sit down and actually analyze them, but they're still widely used and understood, even by children, for example. So let's see. So what I've done on the next slide now is I've taken that verb stand and I have combined it with all these different particles. And I'm showing you here how when you combine it with these different prepositions, it takes on an entirely new symbolic meaning. So we all know what the verb stand means, right? And stand up, that is essentially the same as stand, but it contains perhaps a little bit of more directional meaning because it's up, right? But most of this is not like that. So for the rest of these, they pretty much all have arbitrary meanings, right? So stand down, we might understand the word stand and we might understand the word down, but that doesn't necessarily help us understand that when you put the two together, that actually means to stop. That's sort of a new meaning. Stand out is I really struggled with stand out to come up with a succinct verb, but essentially it's a quality of being prominent or being visible. Stand in means replace, stand for, represent. Stand back means to recede, essentially, I would argue. And stand by is another way to say wait. So when Trump responded when the moderator asked, will you tell these horrible people to stand down? He did not use the verb stand down. He rather said that they should stand back and stand by. And I bring this up because I saw this debate live at that time. And at that time, there was a lot of argument and disagreement as to what is the ultimate meaning of essentially his usage of those phrasal verbs. And to me, immediately, what that told me is that he is not saying that they should stop, but he's rather saying that they should wait. And that's sort of almost a little bit more of a scary meaning, because you're like, what does that mean? What should they wait for? Well, if anyone followed the news last year, we saw the practical or the pragmatic results of that in the US when there was actually an insurrection at the US Capitol. So these phrasal verbs and their symbolic meanings, his meaning got through to the people who it was meant to get through to, regardless of however people argued about that. So with all of this, I hope that you guys have learned a little bit today about icons, indexes, and symbols. And I hope that I have helped you just think a little bit more deeply about this. And I hope I've inspired you to continue learning and to keep the spirit as we go forward. So thank you guys. Thank you everybody for your attention today. And I will now stand back, and I will stand by for the next component of our talk today. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Joshua. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Joshua. Yeah.
Okay.
Now the time is yours, moderator. Mike, or maybe Christian now?
Yes. So Mike is heading home because of family emergency. Director,
Okay.
by the name of Christian. So I would like to thank for the Prof. Sibarani for the material about the teaching
Excuse me, Christian, we cannot
anthropology,
hear well.
linguistic, icon, index, and symbol.
Christian,
Sorry.
sorry, we cannot hear say
Okay.
your voice.
Yes, is not very good. Is that okay now, Prof?
Yes, okay. It's
Okay.
better.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, now we are moving to the second part, which is question and answer. And now, if the audience have questions, you can use the raise hand facility, and also you can put your question in the chat box. And as I can see that we have already question here from Arthur Senduk, and the questions goes to Prof. Sibarani. The questions is nice to hear your detailed presentation, which is very useful and exploring to the expanded and broadened branches of linguistics that the students should know. I guess it's really helpful for freshen up my mind and so give much input. Oh, okay. So it means this is not a questions actually.
I know him very well. Arthur.
Okay, so
Okay.
Pak Arthur, please ask your questions.
Well, thank you very much. Actually, I just want to give my high appreciation to Prof. Sibarani, because it's very helpful to freshen up my mind and also to give much input to S1 students majoring linguistics, as this is also one of the subjects taught in our English department, introduction to general linguistics. So I highly appreciate for the public lecture presented by Prof. Sibarani, and well, it's very useful and very nice. And hopefully in the coming future, there will also be another public lecture like this, which is going to be presented by Prof. Sibarani. I have a question to the second material presenter actually on semiotics.
Yeah, Joshua Lieto.
Yeah.
Okay,
My
okay.
question is very simple because today the use of smartphones or the one in computing areas which really apply emoticons. So today I think everybody is really familiar with what we call smartphones or tablets or computers. So my question is, how did you see semiotics influence? Should the use of smartphones apply emoticons as signs, icons, symbols, or indexes in the development of linguistic studies today? I think the question is addressed to our beloved second material presenter.
Thank you.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. And it is a great question. I think that smartphones and more specifically, the ways that people use smartphones clearly demonstrate how technology can mediate changes in signs. So I do think that our technologies that we use, including smartphones, are transforming the ways that they're not just transforming the ways that people communicate, but they're transforming the basic items of communication in and of themselves. So I think that as we go forward, technology and further advancements in technology are going to continue to have a huge impact on how we create signs, how we use signs, and how signs in and of themselves are even defined. Great question, and I see a big impact for that in the future.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Christian.
Yes. Prof. Yes, Prof.
Yes. I think the questions has been answered.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
it's been answered.
Okay. Thank you.
okay.
After
Thank you.
Yeah, itu Prof. Sibarani.
Yeah.
Yep. I'll personally approach you by messaging.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Arthur Senduk, for the questions. And now we are trying to have another questions from the participant. If there are questions, you are free to raise hand or to put the questions on the chat box, please. Okay, now we still expecting the questions.
Pardon me. Yeah.
Okay, please.
May I ask a question?
Yes, please.
My name is Tiffany Rosanto, a student at the English department on my 5th semester. I have a question thank you for the opportunity first. My question is for Professor Robert Sibarani on his material about anthropological linguistics. So if you could, Professor could give a brief explanation on the differences between linguistic anthropology and anthropological linguistics, if with examples to help better understand. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Okay. In linguistic anthropology, as I just told just now, that anthropology, branch of anthropology that brings linguistic analysis to bear on anthropological, problems. So linking the analysis of semiotic, as Joshua Liet also just told us just now, and then particularly linguistic forms and processes to the interpretations of socio-cultural processes. For example, when Devina Rantung met, let's say, Joshua Lieto one day, and then in maybe 5 minutes, you have to decide whether Joshua Lieto is polite or unpolite. How do you just say decide it? From the language he uses. So we just say decide that someone is polite or unpolite by using the analysis of the language, maybe the words, maybe the just say sounds, or maybe the sentences to say we choose, something like that. So this is in linguistic anthropology. Polite and unpolite is the matter of anthropology, not the matter of just say linguistic. But we can just say solve the anthropological problems by the interpretations of linguistics or semiotics, something like that. In anthropological linguistics, it is said that branch of linguistics that studies linguistic phenomena based on anthropological interpretation relating language to culture, human biology, and cognition. Because we are now in one room with Joshua Lieto, I just say tell maybe his name. Yeah. He is from California, and his native language is English. Of course, when he tries to understand banting tulang atau I can translate into the Indonesians from my own language. Maybe Devina Rantung cannot understand without understand the culture. For example, di bawah sinar matahari dan diterpa hujan. Yeah. The two just say phrases cannot be understood without understanding the culture. Of course, Devina Rantung do not understand setiap hari ditimpa hujan dan ditimpa matahari, because it cannot be understood denotatively, but it must be related to culture. So that's to say anthropological linguistics. When we just say, try to understand the language, Indonesian language, for example, in pantun, kalau ada sumur di ladang, boleh kita berjumpa, menompang mandi. If Devina Rantung do not understand what sumur is, of course, you cannot understand kalau ada umur yang panjang, boleh kita berjumpa lagi. I just say heard that Joshua Lieto will also just say study about pantun like that in say Medan, also just say in Batak language. That's to say anthropological linguistics. So we cannot understand the language, but it must be related to culture, something like that. So that's why when you are a teacher one day, or maybe stand in the just say in front of the class, for example, you have to give the language related to the culture possessed by just say the listeners or your just say students, so that they can catch the meaning of that. When they say Joshua Lieto also use the language with the related to the culture of America, it is different for just difficult for us to understand. So maybe it must be related to the culture in the United States to understand the language. That's to say anthropological linguistics, and it's also they are also related to our topic today, speech performance related to culture. I don't know whether the say Juliet can say the answer.
Yeah, yeah, I can add something. I think that you're right on with that, Dr. Sibarani. Linguistic anthropology is focused on people's use. So how individuals and people use language, and that often includes creatively these sorts of things. Anthropological linguistics, the object is really the culture. So in anthropological linguistics, the focus is not really on how people are using the language, it's actually how culture influences people's use of the language. So they're kind of two sides of the same coin. But yeah, perfect examples.
Okay, thank you. Christian? Halo Pak Christian. Are you there now?
Okay, Prof. Yes, Prof. I'm here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Thank you
yes.
for Devina. And Devina now have a more
As I say,
knowledge.
when we speak English, as a matter of fact, we are now in
Yes.
Indonesia, and then Joshua Lieto now in Medan in Indonesia. I think no problem if you ask, hello, how are you? Just say, what is your name? And are you married? Something like that. Even though as a matter of fact, it is the culture of Indonesians, but I think no problem because we are now in Indonesia. But maybe when we ask the such as sentences in America, in Europe, for example, maybe it is not polite. But here, I think no problem because we are in Indonesia. Even though we speak English, that's I mean language related to the culture where say we use the language. So please, students, you can just say answer questions directed by Christian.
Yes. Okay. So please, everyone, if you have questions, please raise your hand or you can.
We cannot
in the
hear
chat
your
box.
voice, Christian.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Is that clear now that I can?
Maybe the problem is in the headset. Maybe.
Oh, the headset. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Devina Rantung, can you help?
Okay. Okay. Is
Are you
that
in
clear now?
different room, Devina?
I'm in the same room with Sir Garihan, actually. Sir.
We cannot hear.
Can you hear me?
Christian's
Am I
voice.
audible? Am I audible now? Am I audible? Am I audible?
Devina, maybe you can help. You can help him to ask whether any questions or not.
Oh,
There are some questions in the box that are addressed to me. I can answer those now if that helps out while you guys are figuring out what's happening with that.
am I audible?
So there's a
Oh,
question
yeah.
from Octo Talo
Oh,
who
yes.
says, how can you quickly understand a symbol when symbols might look like other symbols? That's a great question. I think that the key there that we have to remember is that symbols do not have to look like anything. Symbols are arbitrary. So it's possible that there are symbols that are similar, but ultimately symbols are very unforgiving because you have to learn them arbitrarily. So it's arbitrary, right? That a symbol might have one meaning and a symbol, there might be a symbol that looks similar or seems similar, but if it's even slightly different, there's a possibility that it has a completely different meaning, and that just has to be learned arbitrarily. So I would point even to the alphabet, right? How some letters can look very similar. So a capital I might look like an L sometimes, right? That might happen. And that's a case where we're getting it confused because the two look like each other. They have iconic similarity. But maybe that's an example of how those are bad symbols, because symbols are supposed to be distinct. So the answer is, with time and a lot of work, you'll increase your understanding of symbols, but they are unforgiving. It is a good point. So the second question is, do all human languages have the same semiotic system? That's a great question. Or does every language differ in its semiotic structure? So this is a really, really, really good question, and it goes to a really deep question at the heart of all linguistics, and that is, when we speak different languages, are the languages actually different? Or in our brains, are we doing essentially the same thing, right? So I'll present a few truisms, a few facts that we can definitely say. So every language, we can say for sure that every language has the same capacity for expression. So regardless of how you must say something in a language because of the language's structure or because of the way you have to put words together, all languages at the end of the day do have the same capacity to express the same ideas. It may need to create some new words within the language. You may need to do some finagling or you may need to do some different work to get there. But ultimately, all languages have the same expressive capacity. And that's really important. At the same time, I would argue that it is not true that all languages fundamentally have the same underlying semiotic structure, because signs do vary, and they vary a lot. And they don't just vary between languages and culture, but they can also vary between individuals. And individuals within the same culture. And this is how we arrive at misunderstandings and miscommunications, is people having different understandings of the objects that the signs are referring to. So to me, that's the fun part of studying semiotics, is learning about what are all the differences that can arise, and it can get really exhausting after a while. But yeah, I would say that would be my response to that. I think I've addressed that. Another one's coming in here. I'll just go ahead and answer it. Thank you for your compliment. Let's see. Okay, I've got your contact. Thank you, Arthur. We will be in contact. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you so much to both of our speakers today. Unfortunately, we're out of time for the question and answer session, so we're going to move on. Thank you once again to our speaker, Professor Dr. Robert Sibarani, MS, for that informative lecture on teaching anthropolinguistics speech performance, and to Professor's company, Sir Joshua Lieto, on his presentation on semiotics, particularly icon, index, and symbols. Very thought-provoking topic, and I believe that we all, the participants, gain new insights from both presentations. Not forgetting to mention also to Sir Gerin for taking over, being a moderator, although with some technical difficulties, but also has helped with the discussion today. And now I would like to invite back Sir Donald Watulung, SSM, as the Chief of Committee, to represent the Dean to virtually present the certificate to our speaker this afternoon, and also to give thanking remarks. So to Sir Donald, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Devina. Your English is very good. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. As our appreciation to Professor Dr. Robert Sibarani, MS, as the speaker of the public lecture this time, yeah, on behalf of the Dean of Faculty of Humanity, I will give you this certificate to Professor Dr. Sibarani. Please have this certificate as our appreciation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My kind regard to the Dean. And thank you also, Donald Tulung, for just say everything you just say organize this public lecture.
Okay. And now, yeah, for the thanking remarks. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of this public lecture. On behalf of the committee, yeah, firstly, I would like to thanks to the Almighty God because of His love, so we can conduct this public lecture well, yeah, from the beginning until the end. And I would like to express, yeah, my deepest gratitude to the speaker of this public lecture, Professor Dr. Sibarani MS, and his company, Mr. Joshua Lieto from University of California, yeah, for delivering the lecture today, yeah, about the Anthropological Linguistics, speech performance, and semiology or semiotics. Yeah, I think what you deliver in this public lecture are very fruitful. We are the participants can take a lot of initial knowledge, yeah. And what we have today, we can implement in our daily activity, yeah, in teaching and learning as well. Yeah. Thank you very much. Good luck and success always on your duty, yeah, wherever you are, Mr. Professor Dr. Robert Sibarani and Joshua Dieto. Yeah, thank you very much. And I would like to express my thanks as well to the Dean of Faculty of Humanities, Maya Waro, MED, PhD, is represented by the Vice Dean too, Dr. Mariam Pandian, Umum. Thank you very much, yeah, for taking time in this public lecture. Yeah. Success always on your duty in leading this Faculty of Humanities. Thank you. And I would like to thanks as well to all of the participants in this public lectures. Yeah, the lecturers and the students and other participants from the other yeah, or outside of our faculty. Thank you for joining this public lecture from the beginning until the end. God bless you always. And my thanks goes to the committee as well. Thank you for the good and solid work so we can conduct this public lecture. Yeah, thank you. And to Devina Rantung, yeah, thank you very much for helping us, the committee, to be the MC in this public lecture. And finally, on behalf of the committee, I would like to thank you to all of you for joining this this public lecture from the beginning until the end. See you again in the other public lecture. Good day. God bless us. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Stay healthy and be successful.
Yeah, you too, Rob.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Joshua.
Thank you.
Say the
Parter, Parter, Senduk, cepat selesai. Okay, we leave, yeah.
Photo.
We will be taking a screenshot now. I invite all the participants to open their camera. Seven slides. So this concludes our documentation session and our public lecture. Thank you again to our speakers and to our Vice Dean of Administration Finance, Dr. Mariam Pandea, and Vice Dean of Academic Affairs, Dr. Joe Ceratu, to the committee, Mayor Donald Tulung, and the Secretary of Committee, Dr. Garin Espanto. And for the participants, students, and lecturers for your contribution and participation, and to our public lecture today. God bless, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Halo.
Halo, Ci.
Halo, orang ada di apa? Area Duta.
Oh, ada Iko.
Kenapa? Iya, Oh iya iya. Iya dong.
Rombongan
Iya.
betul di sana.
Iya. Ya, sudah
Apa
nih
ajak
sukses.
kata ya?
Ajak-ajak dong.
Iya. Aduh. Iya Pak Mas Bro. Mas Bro pesuara itu. Iya. Sudah lama kelar. Ada ujian toh? Tunggu nih.
Iya, standby orang.
Tunggu nih. Iya, iya, oke. Oke, Nek. Terima kasih, Nek. Semua live. Oke.
Nggak, orang
Untuk Mas
minta maaf
Bro,
kan
Mas
nggak mau
Bro,
tunggu.
thank
Terus
you,
sama
Mas Bro.
kamu kan.
Semua pilih quality
Thank
toh.
you, Mas Bro. Iya.
Terus sudah mau tunggu
Iya.
semua pergi.
Iya, sudah, no, semua pergi orang. Kalau kelar. Kalau kelar, orang pergi, no. Oke, thank you.
Quality hotel orang 3.
Iya. Siapa tahu ada orang ini.
Marcel, Devina. Oke, kita muka tidak pernah muncul soalnya. Orang foto bertiga. Yang lain silakan melihat. Sudah, oke. Jadi selesai foto bersama, diakhiri dengan trio legendaris. Oh, ada mahasiswa S2 juga ini, Dominic Perengkuan. Apa kabar, Monik? Jursasing, apa kabar?
Bye. Aman terkendali. Baru menghabiskan berapa piring nasi. So, keluar ku tegang.
Sejam ini dah, jam 1.
So, melanjut ke applied.
Bos, sore sedikit kan gitu.
Iya.
Pas ada istirahat lagi.
Bro, kenapa tampilan ungu begitu dong?
Nen tahu ini so 2 kali.
Begitu memang kalau dibayang-bayangi.
Mungkin.
Ya mesti klik DP belakang.
Bayang-bayang.
Iya. Memang begitu kalau hidup dalam bayang-bayang. Jadi hidup dibayang-bayangi dan bayang-bayang kehidupan.
Itu perlu sentuhan, itu harus disentuh itu.
Bukan cuma terbayang semua melayang.
Ayo. Bayang-bayang kehidupan dan malalayang.
Hanya semua melayang.
Halo, Kajur Sejarah.
Kabar sekar. Dia baca apa kabar?
Baik Bapak Ibu sekalian.
Untuk Kajur.
Masing-masing.
Izin live ya bro, sukses acaranya.
Siap.
Pamer the best.
Thank you.
Bener Donald is the best.
Implementasi FPS, test method dan project based learning.
Ada.
Ya.
Oke.
Baik. Bapak Ibu sekalian, mahasiswa, dengan demikian mohon izin untuk menutup akan portal Zoom ini dengan hitungan dari 100. Terlalu jauh. Dari hitungan 50. Jauh juga. Berarti 3 saja ya. Oke. 3, 2, 1. Tapi aku nggak mau.